The stars stretched into thin lines as the 12 massive ships accelerated away from Earth. Inside the flagship Prometheus, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck, watching her homeworld shrink to a pale blue dot. In 70 years, that dot would expand into a red giant and swallow everything she had ever known. Everyone she loved who stayed behind would be gone. All personnel to cryo stations, the AI announced across every ship. The voice was calm, almost soothing. They called these AI systems sentinels. They would watch over humanity during the long darkness ahead. Vasquez turned from the window. Around her, crew members were already moving toward their cryopods. Some cried. Others laughed nervously. A few stood frozen, unable to accept that they would never see Earth again. 2.3 million humans were leaving on this journey. It was the largest evacuation in history, and it was also an admission of defeat. Humanity could not save their world, so they ran. She walked through the corridors one last time. The ships were beautiful, built over 30 years with resources from every nation on Earth. Each vessel was 10 kilometers long, designed to carry nearly 200,000 people in suspended animation. The journey to Andromeda would take 600 years. When they woke up, everyone they knew would be dead. Earth would be dead. They would be orphans in a new galaxy, the last children of a species that had reached for the stars too late. Lieutenant Marcus Chen fell into step beside her. He was young, only 28, with a sharp mind and steady hands. Admiral, the last of the civilian sectors are reporting ready. We're at 99.7%. And the remaining 0.3%? Families saying goodbye over video links. We're giving them another hour. Chun paused. My sister is still down there. She wouldn't leave. Said someone had to stay and watch the sunrise one last time. Vasquez put a hand on his shoulder. She had no words that would make it better. They walked in silence until they reached the command cryo bay. Rows of pods lined the walls, each one a sleek white coffin that would preserve its occupant for centuries. Officers and essential personnel would sleep here, ready to wake if the sentinels detected any emergency. Will it work? Chum asked quietly. 600 years is a long time. The sentinels will keep us safe, Vasquez said. They'll monitor everything. If there's a problem, they'll wake the necessary crew. When we arrive at Andromeda, they'll wake all of us. She tried to sound confident, but doubt gnawed at her. Humanity had only tested cryosleep for 50 years at most. 600 was pure theory. The sentinel's voice returned. 1 hour to final acceleration burn. All personnel must be secured in cryopods within 30 minutes. Vasquez moved to her assigned pod. It hissed open, revealing a padded interior lined with sensors and medical equipment. She climbed inside and lay back. The padding adjusted to her body shape. Needles slid into her arms, painless and quick. The lid began to close. Elena. It was her second in command, Captain Sarah Okonkwo, in the pod next to hers. Do you think we'll ever see each other again? When we wake up, we'll be different people. 600 years different. We'll see each other, Vasquez promised. And we'll build something new. Something better than what we left behind. The lid sealed. Vasquez felt the cryochemicals entering her bloodstream. Her thoughts began to slow. Her last conscious thought was of Earth, burning in the embrace of its dying star. The Sentinels took over. Across all 12 ships, 2.3 million humans fell into darkness. Their hearts slowed to 1 beat per minute. Their bodies cooled to just above freezing. Their dreams, if they had any, were beyond the reach of time. The AI systems performed their duties with perfect precision. They calculated courses, made minor adjustments, monitored the cryopods for any signs of failure. Every day, every year, every decade, they watched. The ships traveled through the vast emptiness between galaxies where no star shone and no world circled. 100 years passed. The Sentinels noted that all communication with Earth had ceased. This was expected. Earth had only decades remaining when they left. The silence meant their species' homeworld was gone. 200 years passed. The fleet crossed through a region of space where unusual gravitational fields disrupted their sensors. The Sentinels compensated, adjusting the course. They did not realize that gravitational anomalies had scattered their navigation data. The correction they made was wrong. 300 years passed. The error compounded. The fleet was no longer heading toward Andromeda. Instead, they angled back toward the Milky Way, approaching from a different vector that would add 200 years to their journey. 400 years passed. In the Milky Way they had left behind, humanity's few remaining automated stations went silent. Probes lost power. Satellites fell into dead orbits around dead worlds. The last traces of human civilization crumbled to dust. 500 years passed. The Sentinels entered minimum power mode to conserve energy. They still monitored all vital systems, but they no longer performed detailed scans of the surrounding space. They did not see the massive structures being built in the galaxy ahead of them. 600 years passed. By the original calculations, they should have arrived. The Sentinels checked their data and realized the navigation error. They calculated that the fleet would reach the edge of the Milky Way in 200 more years. The AI systems decided this was acceptable. The Milky Way was familiar territory. They could find habitable worlds there. They did not wake the crew to inform them of the change. 700 years passed. The galaxy ahead showed signs of immense conflict. Energy signatures unlike anything in the Sentinel databases appeared across thousands of systems. The AI recorded this information but did not understand its meaning. 800 years passed. The fleet approached the galactic rim. The Sentinels began preparing to wake the command staff. They organized all the data they had collected over 8 centuries. They did not know they were bringing humanity back to a galaxy that had forgotten them. A galaxy drowning in blood and fire. A galaxy where their species was believed extinct for 400 years. Inside the Prometheus, Admiral Elena Vasquez's heart rate began to increase. Warmth spread through her body. The chemicals in her blood began to reverse their preservation effect. Her mind stirred in the darkness. She had closed her eyes as a woman fleeing a dying world. She would open them as something else entirely. The galaxy needed warriors, and humanity had always been very, very good at war. The Valorian merchant captain knew something was wrong when his long-range sensors went dead. He was hauling agricultural supplies from the farming colonies to the inner worlds when his ship suddenly went blind. Around him, the other ships in the convoy began broadcasting emergency signals. "Unknown vessels approaching," his navigator said. Her fur stood on end, an instinct from when her species lived in forests and feared predators. Configuration does not match any known design. The captain ordered weapons charged, though Valorian ships only had basic defensive systems. His species had not fought a war in 3,000 years. The galaxy was peaceful. Different species traded, shared technology, and settled disputes through negotiation. War was something primitive cultures did before they learned better. The attacking ships appeared on visual sensors. They were alive. Not ships with biological components, but actual living creatures shaped into vessels. Their hulls pulsed with what looked like veins. Their weapons grew from their bodies like tumors. The captain had never seen anything so horrible. Hailing them, the communications officer said. Standard peaceful greeting in 87 languages. The creatures did not respond with words. They responded with violence. Beams of energy that seemed to eat matter itself struck the convoy. The captain watched in horror as the ship beside him simply dissolved, its hull breaking down into component atoms that the enemy ships absorbed. 2,000 Valorians died in seconds. All ships scatter. The captain ordered. Emergency jump. His ship barely made it into faster-than-light travel before the weapons reached him. Behind them, the entire convoy was destroyed. He was the only survivor. When he reached the inner worlds and told his story, no one believed him at first. Surely he was mistaken. Surely these were just unusual pirates or maybe a rogue faction. Then the attack spread. The Cathaxi Dominion emerged from a hidden star cluster in the galactic core. No one knew they existed. Their space had always appeared empty on sensors, protected by technology that bent light and distorted readings. For millions of years, they had grown in secret, building their strength, waiting. They were insectoid, but not like any insect species the galaxy had known. They stood 3 meters tall on 6 legs. Their bodies were covered in black chitin that could resist most weapons. They had no individuals in the way other species understood. Each Cathaxi was part of a greater whole, connected to the overmind that controlled them all. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They existed to expand, to consume, to eliminate all other life. The Valorian Federation tried diplomacy first. They sent ambassadors to the Cathaxi border. The ambassadors never returned. Then they sent a military delegation with peaceful intentions. The Cathaxi harvested them for biological material. When the Federation finally understood that war was inevitable, it was already too late. The Cathaxi war machine was perfect for conquest. Their ships were grown, not built. They could produce a new fleet in weeks using consumed matter from destroyed worlds. Their weapons did not just kill. They converted enemy forces into resources. Every ship they destroyed made them stronger. Every world they conquered became a factory. 3 billion Valorians died in the first year. Their worlds burned under orbital bombardment. The Cathaxi did not want prisoners or slaves. They wanted raw materials. They stripped entire planets down to bedrock, taking every useful molecule and leaving behind dead rocks. Other species watched in horror and prepared their defenses. The crystalline harmonics were an ancient species known for their wisdom. They had existed for 50,000 years, surviving through peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. They tried to reason with the Cathaxi. They offered knowledge, resources, anything to stop the slaughter. The Cathaxi studied the harmonics crystalline, biology, and discovered they could use it to power their ships. Within a decade, the entire harmonic species was extinct, their bodies harvested and installed into Cathaxi vessels. Trillions of years of culture and philosophy were erased, so the Dominion could fuel their expansion. The warrior clans of Graxstar were different. They were proud fighters who had once conquered a dozen star systems through military might. When the Cathaxi came for them, the Graxstar met them with everything they had. For 10 years, they fought. Their warriors were brave and skilled. Their weapons were powerful. Their tactics were sound by the standards of galactic military doctrine. It did not matter. The Cathaxi adapted to every strategy. They learned from every battle. The Graxstar inflicted casualties that would have broken any other species, but the Dominion simply grew more soldiers. When the last Graxstar fortress finally fell, the Cathaxi had learned valuable lessons about combat that made them even more dangerous. Species after species fell. The Cathaxi transformed the galactic core into a nightmare of hive complexes and processing facilities. They strip-mined entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty space and dead stars. The biological diversity that had taken billions of years to evolve was erased in decades. Survivors fled to the galactic rim. Ships from 100 species arrived in the outer territories, carrying refugees and horror stories. They formed the Remnant Alliance out of desperation. Different species that had never worked together now shared resources and technology because the alternative was extinction. An Alliance exploration team found something unexpected in the Rim territories. Ancient stations orbited dead worlds. The structures were old, very old, but the design was unlike anything in current galactic civilization. The archaeologists who studied them discovered that these were human constructions. Humanity, the Alliance, had heard legends of them. A species that had existed in the galaxy hundreds of years ago and then vanished. The archaeologists excavated human colonies and found clues to their fate. Earth, their homeworld, had died when its star expanded. Rather than fight for other worlds, humanity had chosen to leave entirely. They built massive ships and fled to another galaxy. The Alliance scientists studied human technology with fascination. These people had been peaceful, focused on science and exploration. Their weapons were primitive, barely more advanced than early spaceflight civilizations. The humans had clearly never fought a major war. They seemed like gentle refugees who died running from disaster rather than facing it. Some Alliance members wished they could have met humanity. Perhaps these peaceful humans would have known how to negotiate with the Cathaxi. Perhaps their fresh perspective would have found a solution. Others were simply grateful. Humanity had died before seeing what the galaxy had become. At least they had escaped in peace, sleeping through the long journey to Andromeda. At least they never knew about the genocide happening in their former home. The war continued. The Cathaxi now controlled 70% of the galaxy. Trillions were dead. Hundreds of species were extinct. The Remnant Alliance fought desperate defensive battles, buying time they did not have. Their scientists searched for a weapon that could stop the Dominion. Their military commanders tried to develop tactics that would slow the advance. Nothing worked. The Cathaxi were simply too powerful, too numerous, and too relentless. The Alliance calculated that they had maybe one generation left before they were overrun completely. Some species began planning final stands. Others considered surrender, though they knew the Cathaxi did not take prisoners. In the deepest councils of the Alliance, leaders spoke honestly about their situation. They were going to lose. The galaxy would fall. Everything would be consumed and converted into the Dominion. In a few more decades, the Cathaxi would finish their conquest and then expand to neighboring galaxies, spreading their horror across the universe. The galaxy was dying, and no one could save it. Far beyond the galactic rim, in the emptiness between spirals, 12 human ships continued their journey. Their passengers slept, unaware that they were returning to a war zone, unaware that the peaceful galaxy they had left behind was now a charnel house, unaware that they would arrive at exactly the moment when hope had died and violence ruled everything. Admiral Elena Vasquez opened her eyes to blinking red lights. That was wrong. Everything was supposed to be green when they arrived. Red meant emergency. Red meant something had gone terribly wrong during their 800-year sleep. The cryopod lid hissed open. Cold air hit her face. Her muscles were stiff, her thoughts slow. Around her, other command staff were waking up, groaning and confused. The Sentinel AI's voice filled the chamber, calm despite the warning lights. Admiral Vasquez, you have been awakened due to critical situation requiring command decision. We are not at our intended destination. We have entered the Milky Way galaxy. Initial scans indicate widespread conflict across all monitored sectors. Vasquez tried to stand and nearly fell. Lieutenant Chun caught her arm. He looked as disoriented as she felt. The Milky Way? That's impossible. We were going to Andromeda. Navigation error occurred 400 years into journey, the Sentinel explained. Gravitational anomalies corrupted our course data. We compensated incorrectly. We have been traveling back toward our origin galaxy for the past 400 years. The Admiral made it to a console and pulled up the navigation data. The Sentinel was right. They were on the edge of the Milky Way, not Andromeda. 800 years of travel had brought them home to a galaxy that should have been empty of human life. "Show me Earth," she said quietly. Earth no longer exists as a habitable planet. The sun expanded as predicted. The system is now a dead zone. Vasquez had known this would happen. She had watched Earth shrink to nothing as they left. But knowing and seeing were different things. The screen showed the bloated red giant that had been their sun and nothing else. No blue world. No moon. Nothing but stellar death. And the conflict you mentioned? The Sentinel displayed energy signatures across the galaxy. They were massive, violent, unlike anything in the historical database. Unknown hostile force is engaged in systematic conquest. Preliminary analysis suggests extermination-level warfare. Intercepted communications indicate this force calls themselves the Cathaxi Dominion. Captain Okonkwo had reached another console. These energy readings are from world killer weapons. Multiple planetary bombardments happening simultaneously. Sentinel, how long has this been going on? Best estimate, 400 years. The Cathaxi have conquered approximately 70% of the galaxy. The command deck fell silent. They had left a peaceful galaxy 800 years ago. They had returned to find it conquered by a genocidal empire. Vasquez looked at the faces of her officers. They were all thinking the same thing. They could leave. They had enough fuel to reach Andromeda. It would take another 600 years, but they could make it. They could run again. Sentinel, what happened to the other species? The Valorians, the Harmonics, all the peaceful civilizations we knew? Most are extinct. Remnant populations have formed an alliance and retreated to the galactic rim. They appear to be losing a war of attrition. Vasquez pulled up more data. The Sentinel had intercepted communications, translated them, and built a complete picture of the situation. The Cathaxi were monsters. They did not fight for territory or resources in the normal sense. They fought to eliminate all other life. Every species they encountered was either consumed or destroyed. "Wake the other ship commanders," Vasquez ordered. "Full briefing in 1 hour. And Sentinel, prepare to wake military personnel. All of them." "Admiral, that is 400,000 people. Waking that many will strain our resources." "Do it anyway. If we're going to make a decision about this, I want our soldiers awake to vote on it." Over the next hours, the 12 colony ships came alive. Commanders woke up, learned the situation, and gathered for a virtual conference. Some argued for continuing to Andromeda. They had a mission to preserve humanity. Getting involved in someone else's war was not part of that mission. Others said they had no choice. If the Cathaxi controlled the galaxy, they would eventually expand to Andromeda too. Running would only delay the inevitable. "We're not soldiers," Captain Davidson of the Tokyo said. "We're colonists. We have civilians, children, people who just want to build a new life." "The Cathaxi don't care what we want," Okonkwo replied. "If we run, we buy maybe 600 years. Then they come for Andromeda. Then we're fighting anyway, but older and weaker." Vasquez let them argue. This was too important for her to decide alone. Finally, she called for a vote. Should the Exodus fleet intervene in the Galactic War, or should they continue to Andromeda? The vote was unanimous. 12 captains, 12 votes to stay and fight. "Then we wake the military," Vasquez said, "and we figure out how to stop an empire that has conquered the galaxy." Over the next week, 400,000 military personnel were awakened. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, intelligence officers. They had been trained for colony defense and asteroid mining operations. Now they learned they were going to war against an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of civilizations. The human fleet began studying the Cathaxi. The Sentinel had recorded many battles from intercepted communications. Human military analysts watched and noted patterns. The Cathaxi were powerful and numerous, but they fought in predictable ways. Their tactics assumed enemies would retreat or defend. The concept of aggressive counterattack seemed foreign to them. "They've never fought anyone who knows how to wage war," said Colonel Park, the chief military strategist. "Every species in this galaxy evolved peacefully. They don't have military traditions. They don't study warfare. The Cathaxi overwhelmed them with numbers and biological weapons. And we're different?" Chun asked. "We're human," Park said simply. "We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We wrote books about war. We taught it in schools. We practiced it constantly. These aliens don't know what real warfare looks like." The fleet detected a Cathaxi hunting pack pursuing Remnant Alliance refugees. 20 bioships were chasing a civilian convoy. The humans watched the Alliance vessels try to defend themselves. Their tactics were desperate and uncoordinated. They would all die within hours. "Send the Tokyo," Vasquez ordered. "One ship. Let's see what we can do." The destroyer Tokyo jumped into the combat zone. The Cathaxi immediately shifted their attention to this new target. They expected it to run or die. Instead, the Tokyo accelerated straight at them. Its railguns opened fire at extreme range, throwing metal slugs at relativistic speeds. The first bioship exploded before the Cathaxi understood they were under attack. The Tokyo did not stop. It wove through the enemy formation, firing continuously. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked from its launchers. Directed energy weapons cut through biological hulls. The Cathaxi tried to respond, but their weapons were designed for stationary or retreating targets. The Tokyo was doing neither. In 8 minutes, 15 Cathaxi bioships were destroyed. The remaining 5 fled in what the Sentinel identified as confusion. The human destroyer had taken only minimal damage. The Remnant Alliance convoy was saved. They broadcast messages of gratitude and disbelief. Who were these people? Where had they come from? Vasquez opened a channel on all known frequencies. She spoke clearly, knowing this message would spread across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Exodus Fleet. We are the children of Earth. 800 years ago. We left this galaxy because our homeworld was dying. We thought we would never return. We were wrong. We have returned to find our home burning, our galaxy enslaved. We do not know most of you. We have no shared history. But we share something more important. We all deserve to live free." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "The Cathaxi have terrorized this galaxy because no one knew how to stop them. We do. Humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to fight. We are very, very good at it. To the Remnant Alliance, we stand with you. To the Cathaxi Dominion, you terrorized the galaxy long enough. That ends now." The Remnant Alliance commanders did not know what to make of the humans at first. They arrived at the agreed meeting point near a neutral star system, their ships battered from centuries of losing battles. The human fleet looked small by comparison. Only 12 capital ships. The Alliance had thousands. Yet the humans had destroyed 15 Cathaxi bioships without losing a single vessel. Commander Thelrak of the Gragstar Warriors was the first to speak. His species had fought the Cathaxi longer than anyone and lost more battles than he could count. "Admiral Vasquez, we are grateful for your intervention. But we must be realistic. The Dominion has millions of ships. You have 12. How can you possibly make a difference?" Vasquez smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Commander, We don't plan to fight millions of ships. We plan to teach you how to fight so you can handle the millions while we handle the important targets. Over the next weeks, human military advisors spread throughout the Alliance fleet. They brought with them concepts that seemed strange to the aliens. Ambush tactics, feigned retreats, psychological warfare, strategic deception. The Alliance had always fought defensively, trying to protect what they had left. The humans taught them to attack. You fight to survive, Colonel Park explained to a group of Valorian officers. That's noble, but it's not enough. You need to fight to win. There's a difference. But we are not warriors, one Valorian protested. Our species has not fought a war in 3,000 years. Then it's time to remember how, Park said bluntly. The Cathaxi are warriors. They live for conquest. If you want to beat them, you need to be willing to do things they don't expect. You need to hurt them worse than they hurt you. The first joint operation was the defense of Thalrix 4, a world where 20 million Alliance civilians were evacuating. The Cathaxi sent a massive force to stop them. By traditional tactics, the Alliance would have formed a defensive line in orbit and fought until they were overwhelmed. Instead, the humans suggested something different. They hid most of the Alliance fleet behind the planet's moon. A small force engaged the Cathaxi directly, then retreated in apparent panic. The Cathaxi pursued, confident in their usual victory. When they passed the moon, the hidden Alliance ships emerged and attacked from behind. Caught between two forces, the Cathaxi formation collapsed. It was the Alliance's first major victory in decades. The Cathaxi over mine noticed. These new humans were different. They did not fight like prey species. They fought like predators. The Overmind studied the humans and realized something disturbing. Humans had evolved through constant warfare. They had spent their entire history fighting each other, refining the art of killing. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved toward cooperation. Only humans had evolved to be soldiers. The Dominion redirected 40% of their military toward human space. If these humans were a threat, they needed to be eliminated quickly. The battle for the Perdition Nebula became legendary. Admiral Chun commanded a task force protecting a critical supply route. The Cathaxi sent 300 bioships to destroy it. Chun had only 40 Alliance vessels and 5 human ships. By any reasonable calculation, he should have retreated. Instead, he turned the nebula into a trap. Human engineers placed nuclear mines throughout the dense gas clouds. When the Cathaxi entered, they could not detect the mines through the interference. Chun's ships lured them deeper into the nebula, then activated the mines. The explosions triggered a chain reaction in the nebula's gases. 200 Cathaxi ships were destroyed in minutes. The rest fled. The Cathaxi learned to fear nebulas after that. They learned to fear asteroid fields too, after human marines hid inside them and ambushed entire convoys. They learned to fear empty space, because the humans had perfected the art of the ambush. Everywhere the Dominion went, humans found ways to kill them, but the cost was terrible. The Cathaxi had numbers the humans could not match. For every bioship destroyed, 3 more were grown. Human ships were being damaged faster than they could be repaired. The colony ships were not warships. They were designed for peaceful colonization, modified for combat in desperate times. 3 months after the war began, the colony ship Vancouver was destroyed. 800,000 civilians died when a Cathaxi surprise attack overwhelmed its escorts. Vasquez attended the memorial service and spoke to the survivors. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. We came here to build a new home. We found a war instead. Some of you did not sign up for this. Some of you just wanted to farm or teach or raise your children in peace. I understand. But the Cathaxi won't give us that choice. They want to kill everyone. So we fight, or we die. There is no third option. More civilians were awakened to replace losses. Engineers, soldiers, pilots, people who had gone to sleep, expecting to wake up on a peaceful colony world, found themselves in military training instead. Some resented it. Most accepted it. They understood the stakes. Human tactics were spreading throughout the Alliance military. Species that had never thought about warfare now studied human military history. They read about ancient battles on Earth. They learned about Sun Tzu and von Clausewitz. They practiced maneuvers that felt unnatural to them but worked against the Galaxy. A Valorian officer named Kelvis became famous for his adaptation of human guerrilla tactics. He took a small fleet into Kvathi-controlled space and began destroying supply lines. The Galaxy sent forces to hunt him. Kelvis avoided direct combat, struck when they were vulnerable, and disappeared before they could respond. It was exhausting, dangerous work. But it was working. The Harmonic's last survivors, only a few thousand individuals, found a new purpose. They had been a peaceful species, philosophers, and artists. Now they volunteered for human training programs. They could not bring back their dead species, but they could ensure the Galaxy paid for the genocide. They became some of the most dedicated soldiers in the Alliance. 6 months into the war, the tide was turning. The Galaxy still controlled most of the galaxy, but they had stopped advancing. The remnant Alliance had reclaimed 15% of lost territory. Billions of refugees were rescued from occupied worlds. The impossible was becoming possible, but Vasquez knew it was not enough. The Galaxy controlled the galactic core, where all their factories and hive complexes were located. As long as they held that industrial base, time favored them. They would eventually overwhelm the Alliance through sheer production. Human intelligence discovered something crucial. The Galaxy overmind was not distributed. It was a single massive biological structure hidden in the galactic core. Every Galaxy soldier, every bioship, every hive complex was controlled by this central intelligence. If the overmind died, the entire Dominion would lose coordination. Vasquez called a war council. Alliance commanders from a dozen species gathered aboard the Prometheus. She showed them the intelligence on the overmind and proposed a plan called Operation Jericho, a direct strike on the galactic core, a suicide mission to destroy the heart of the Galaxy Dominion. "This is insane," Thelrex said bluntly. "The core is protected by thousands of defensive stations. You would need to fight through half the galaxy to reach it." "Yes," Vasquez agreed. "It's a terrible plan. It will cost thousands of ships and millions of lives. Most of us won't survive. But if we succeed, we win the war. If we don't try, we lose slowly over the next decade." She looked around the table at faces from species she had never known existed until a few months ago. "Our species died once, 800 years ago. We refuse to let this galaxy die the same way. We're going in. The question is, who's coming with us?" There was silence. Then Kelvis stood. "The Valorians will join you." One by one, the other commanders stood. Species that had barely been able to defend themselves months ago now volunteered for a suicide mission. The humans had taught them how to fight. Now, they would teach the humans something in return. They would teach them that courage was not a uniquely human trait. The Alliance began preparing for the largest military operation in galactic history. They would strike at the heart of the Galaxy Dominion. They would end this war, one way or another. The strike force assembled at the edge of Galaxy-controlled space. 250 ships from the Alliance. 50 human vessels, including the Prometheus with Admiral Vasquez commanding. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever gathered, and it was nothing compared to what waited for them in the galactic core. Vasquez stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The route to the overmind passed through 17 defensive lines. Each line had hundreds of bioships and dozens of fortified positions. The Sentinel AI calculated their odds of reaching the target at less than 5%. "Admiral, final ship reports are in," Chun said. "All vessels report ready. Crews are prepared." She had given everyone a choice. No one was forced to come on this mission. Every person aboard these ships had volunteered, knowing they would probably die. Some had written final messages to loved ones. Others had simply accepted their fate. They were going to end this war or die trying. The fleet jumped into Cathaxi space. The first defensive line detected them immediately. Alarm signals spread through the Dominion. The Overmind recognized this was not a raid. This was an invasion. The battle began. Alliance ships used every tactic the humans had taught them. They feinted, ambushed, and struck from unexpected angles. The Cathaxi responded with overwhelming force. Bioships swarmed the fleet like angry insects. The space between stars filled with weapons fire and explosions. The Alliance corvette Daybreak rammed the Cathaxi station, destroying both. The human destroyer Sol detonated its reactor inside a bioship formation, taking 12 enemy vessels with it. The Valorian cruiser commanded by Kelvis fought until its hull was torn apart, its crew still firing weapons until the very end. They broke through the first defensive line with 70 ships remaining. The second line was worse. The Cathaxi had reinforced it with fresh forces. The fighting was brutal and close range. Ships on both sides were destroyed so quickly the tactical displays could not keep up. The Prometheus took damage to its port side. Emergency crews rushed to seal breaches. Vasquez ordered them to keep moving forward. Stopping meant death. The only chance was to keep pushing toward the core dot by the fourth defensive line. They had lost half their ships. By the seventh, 3/4 were gone. The survivors were battered, their hulls scarred, their weapons running low on ammunition. But they kept going. Every species in the fleet had lost friends, comrades, entire crews. They fought not just for victory now, but for revenge. The human carrier Cryo was surrounded by bioships. Its captain, Maria Santos, knew her ship was finished. She ordered the crew to evacuate in shuttles, then set a collision course for the largest Cathaxi station in the sector. The gyro struck at full speed. The resulting explosion cleared a path for the fleet to advance. Thorak's flagship was cut in half by Cathaxi weapons. He survived only because he was in the armored command center. His crew carried him to an escape pod. As they loaded him in, he grabbed his second officer. "Tell the humans," he said, coughing blood. "Tell them the Graxtar remember. Tell them we were proud to fight beside them." The 12th defensive line broke them. Only 20 ships remained functional. The Prometheus was one of them, but barely. Half its weapons were destroyed. Its engines were damaged. Life support was failing in 3 decks. But they were through. Ahead lay the Galactic Core and the Overmind. The Cathaxi threw everything at them. Every bioship in the core, every weapon platform, every defensive station. The sky turned white with weapons fire. Ships died every second. The Alliance vessels fought with desperate courage, buying time for the Prometheus to reach its target. Vasquez could see the Overmind on visual sensors now. It was moon-sized, a grotesque combination of biology and technology. Billions of neural pathways connected every Cathaxi in the galaxy to this central intelligence. Destroying it would not kill every Cathaxi, but it would shatter their unity. They would become disconnected, confused, vulnerable. The Harmonic's last ship sacrificed itself to destroy a weapons platform blocking the way. A Valorian cruiser rammed the bioship that got too close to the Prometheus. One by one, the escort ships died to protect humanity's flagship. "Admiral, we have 13 ships left," Chun reported. His voice was steady despite the chaos. All are heavily damaged. The Kathaxi are concentrating their entire core defense fleet on our position. Vasquez checked the tactical display. They were not going to make it. Even if every remaining ship sacrificed itself, the Prometheus would be destroyed before it reached the Overmind. The mission had failed. No, she would not accept that. Not after everything they had sacrificed. Sentinel, she said quietly. Execute final protocol. Wake everyone. Admiral, that protocol is only for wake everyone. If we die here, humanity dies awake and fighting and free. I won't let our species go quietly into the dark again. Across the Prometheus, cryopods began opening. Civilians who had slept through the war woke up to find their ship dying around them. Parents grabbed their children. Engineers rushed to repair stations. Everyone moved to their emergency positions because that was what humans did. When the end came, they faced it standing. Vasquez sat in the captain's chair and took manual control of her ship. All remaining vessels, this is the Admiral. Thank you. It has been an honor to fight beside you. Now break off. Get yourselves to safety. Negative, Admiral, Calvus replied. His ship was a wreck, held together by emergency patches. We go together or not at all. The 12 remaining escort ships formed up around the Prometheus. Together, they accelerated toward the Overmind. Kathaxi bioships swarmed them. Weapons fire tore through hulls. Ships exploded one after another. But they kept going. The Prometheus was the last ship left. Its hull was breaching in multiple locations. Its crew was dying. But Vasquez held course. The Overmind filled her view screen. So close now. Just a few more kilometers. Sentinel, arm the prototype weapon. Deep in the ship's core, the last weapon humanity had brought from Earth activated. It was designed before the Exodus, meant to destroy asteroids threatening colonies. A matter-antimatter warhead with a yield measured in gigatons. They had never used it. Never needed to. They had saved it for 800 years, and now it would serve its purpose. The Kathaxi understood what was happening. They threw everything at the Prometheus. The flagship's shields failed. Hull breaches spread. The ship was dying. Elena, Okonkwo said from the weapons station. It's been good serving with you. Likewise, Sarah. Vasquez's hands were steady on the controls. Sentinel, on my mark, release the warhead and detonate. Mark. The weapon dropped from the Prometheus belly and accelerated toward the Overmind. The Kathaxi tried to intercept it. They were too late. The warhead struck the Overmind surface and penetrated deep into its biological structure. Matter met antimatter. Physics took over. The explosion was visible across the galaxy. The Overmind simply ceased to exist, converted into pure energy. The blast wave expanded, destroying everything for light years in every direction. The Prometheus, already dying, was vaporized instantly. Admiral Elena Vasquez died knowing she had succeeded. Across the galaxy, every Kathaxi suddenly stopped. The connection to the Overmind was gone. Billions of soldiers stood confused, no longer receiving orders. Bioships drifted without direction. Hive complexes went silent. The perfect unity that had made the Dominion unstoppable was shattered. The surviving Alliance forces could not believe what they were seeing. The Kathaxi were not fighting anymore. They were not coordinating. Some tried to fight on instinct. Others simply shut down. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was defeated in an instant. 9 human ships survived the battle. Out of 50 that had entered Kathaxi space, 9 limped back to Alliance territory. They carried 30,000 survivors from a strike force of 200,000. The cost had been terrible. The victory was absolute. The survivors were met as heroes. Species across the galaxy celebrated. The Kathaxi still existed, but they were no longer unified. Individual hive clusters could be dealt with through conventional warfare. The Age of Terror was over. The humans held a vote on what to do next. They could continue to Andromeda as originally planned, or they could stay in the Milky Way and help rebuild what the Cathaxi had destroyed. 1.1 million humans remained. The vote was not close. They chose to stay. They selected a world in former Cathaxi space, a planet that had been stripped but could be restored. They named it New Earth. The colony ships landed for the first time in 800 years. Humans stepped onto solid ground and began building homes. The Remnant Alliance became the Galactic Concordat. Humans were founding members, respected and honored. Other species wanted to learn from them. Not just military tactics, but everything. Human culture, human philosophy, human determination. A memorial was built on New Earth. It listed every person who died in the war. Human names stood beside Valorian, Graxtar, Harmonic, and dozens of other species. At the top of the memorial were words from Admiral Vasquez's last transmission. We came looking for a new home. We found a war. We became something more than refugees. We became the shield for those who needed one. Years later, Alliance scientists made a discovery in the ruins of the Overmind. Cathaxi eggs, thousands of them, preserved and viable. They could hatch these eggs and raise Cathaxi without the Overmind.